Okay. Welcome, welcome.
Here we go.
So, hello, my loves. Welcome to the space. We are so grateful to have you guys who are live with us, and for everyone who's rewatching the recording, welcome in. I know there's a number of people who are wanting to drop in post-recording. Hi, darlings. So let's kickstart this goodie. Guys, you're in for an amazing 1 hour experience. I'm Emma. In case you didn't know, I am Michael's daughter. And basically, the flow we're going to go into today is an interview style with me and my dad around the father codes. And the father codes is his one-on-one program that he offers. But what we really wanted to bring in today is unpacking three of the most foundational areas of life that so many of us have built foundations on that he wrote. And that's faith, family, and finance. And I actually took some time to convince my dad to create and bring this into the world, being his daughter. And I was like, the world needs this. I have worked with a lot of people around the world. I meet a lot of people. And I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to the areas of faith, finance, or family, there's a moment in our lives where one, if not all three of those, crumble. Something comes up and it's like, I don't know if you've experienced that. If you have, I'd love you guys to put in the chat box if you've experienced it before in your human experience where your faith or your finance or your family has just gone a little asquiff. It's like the foundations have eroded. I feel like so, yes. Very high, my love. Yes. So the reason
Hi, sorry. I just wanted to say hi.
hi.
How's it going? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Hey,
This is a hello. This is a very intimate meeting. I just wanted to be quite honest with you. I just wanted to listen in. I'm literally like doing stuff because we have a wedding today and I wasn't really aware of it. I'm kind of helping my family, but I'm here. I'm listening in.
You're
Emma, how are you?
so good.
Very nice to see you again.
It's
And Mr. Swain, I've heard
hey.
phenomenal things about you. And
Oh, fantastic.
it's really just yeah, it really is just a pleasure to be in your presence. I've been wanting to, I don't know, just witness you, I guess. So I guess this is my
Awesome.
opportunity.
Oh,
Yes.
well, thank you so much. I'm honored, really honored.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't mean to just be on mute and everything with my audio and my video. Uh
you're
yeah, thank you so much. Okay.
Oh, thank
All right.
you.
I just want to make sure we're all
Wonderful.
on the same page.
Great to
All right.
you
connect.
guys are with us. It's
Absolutely. It's
quite
such a
fun.
pleasure.
We love this.
Such a pleasure.
We've run this masterclass
Mm,
a couple times and it's so special running it here and every time so much magic. But let me drop in for you guys a little bit of introduction
amazing.
on my dad
Absolutely.
and then we're going to go over into the interview. So when it comes to finance, and the reason I like to say this is one, I don't think anyone likes to toot their own horn, but I always like to know that when we're coming into a space, the person who we are coming in with has a level of insight. There's codes there of wisdom, and that's really what we want to open space to share. And my dad's journey is extraordinary. I can say that as his daughter. I can also say that as a nearly 30-year-old woman who has met and worked with a lot of different humans around the world. So just for you guys to get some fun facts of behind the scenes of what you're going to be getting just on the code of authority from Michael Swain. Firstly, he was adopted by a multimillionaire family, and his father was a very integral businessman. He worked all around the world, owned companies, and because of that, dad was a trust fund baby. So by the time he was in his 20s, he was just by nature a millionaire, and he grew up with that lifestyle. Now, as he went through his journey in his 20s, he lost all of his money. And it was quite sudden. It was in a business deal. But again, life and its ups and downs. When we're talking about finance, when we're talking about faith, when we're talking about codes of actually how we construct ourselves as beings in this world to feel empowered, to feel connected, you want to know that someone's gone through the ups and downs. So if you're in that place where you're like, and it's crumbling, it happens. And dad moved through that. He continued into his early 30s and he built with my mom at that time um, one of the largest, if the largest, events and conference management companies in South Africa, which gave them a huge amount of wealth. We moved to the States. They built out another incredible business together. And again, in the 2008 economic crash, we lost everything. So it was like round two. Not only had he been born a millionaire and lost millions, he then rebuilt himself. And then through the property crash, lost it again. So if you're looking for trials on learning money, faith, and finance, and then rebuilding oneself, these are the codes that you want to hear, because in this life there's so many people who are teaching us about money and wanting wealth, but we need to know the foundation of what happens when we have it and when we don't, and who we are in our integrity. And that's something that most fathers do not impart, and most humans, sons and daughters, haven't received yet, is actually a truth of how to keep that code of sovereignty no matter what. And that's something I've witnessed my dad walk through in the most remarkable ways, honestly, where other people would have thrown themselves off a cliff, and he's come out stronger and more powerful and more determined. So it's an integrity there that is beyond. In family as well, guys, you guys are in for a treat if you ever do work one-on-one with my dad or connect in on that level. He's remarkable. He is a man of absolute sovereignty and power when it comes to love. He proposed to my mom on their first date because he knew. He had he had a 10-year journey leading up to that moment in time, but he knew 100% in his faith and in his heart who his woman was. He also knows what makes a marriage work, how to be a man of integrity, and how to be a woman of integrity, and how to actually claim that marriage. They were successfully, and I used to say disgustingly, in love for 30 years. It was genuinely a really good marriage, guys. Like, I was right there in the center of it. It was a powerful marriage. And at the end of it, my mom got cancer and died. So we're going to go into the faith aspect of life when you've built that. My dad also had two powerful daughters, myself and my older sister, Catherine. And he raised us with the highest level of integrity and standard, both of us. And we were both very high achievers. And my sister, after my mom's death, took her own life. I death's welcome. So I want to talk into that topic too, which is that family is probably our most triggering place in life because we have no control over it. But it fundamentally shapes us. It shapes our ego, it shapes our heart. And again, so many of us don't have a parent or someone of authority to say, hey, this is where you keep your chin above water. This is how you stay in your truth. And this is how you walk through it. But if you meet a man who's been married and in love successfully for 30 years and their wife has passed away, they're going to teach you something about that. If you meet a man who put his heart into his two daughters and his oldest child took her life, and he still returned back into his truth, you're going to meet a level of understanding when life gets real and also how life gets to turn around. My dad now, just on a current state in family, rebuilt himself, where most humans would probably have fallen the fuck apart. He stayed into his truth, he stayed into his faith, he stayed into his process. And a few years after my mom and sister's passing, he met his now wife, Lynn, and of course, wifed her in 6 months. And again, I can say they have a disgustingly in love marriage. Absolutely through and through, a devoted, true, powerful, intimate marriage. And that's why I can say without a shadow of a doubt, and then we're going to bring dad in, when we're talking about the subject of faith and what real, authentic faith is, there is no one in this world I know like my dad. He not only has a 40-year career in the ministry, he's planted hundreds of churches around the world. He was the global chief representation for a multinational movement with churches, but he walks an intimate personal relationship with God. And that's something he taught me. And that's something I've witnessed with him in every single moment of our lives. And that's something that I want every person who's here and who's rewatching this to have the opportunity to begin to feel and to express and to bring into your own lives and to begin to receive the codes of how. because I can definitely tell you a lot of people ask dad that question after my mom and my sister, how do you still have faith? How do you still believe in God? Like, how is it possible? So, my loves, as I bring in dad, we are here to talk to you today and to drop in on Q&As around our three major topics, which is finance, family, and faith, and to really get some of his codes reflected back. And also, right at the end, we're going to open up space for him to share a little bit about his heart-based project, as he is currently the head of a global organization. But I told him, Michael, you have to mentor people. You got to do it. So he created an incredible opportunity that's very exclusive just because his time is precious and his soulmates are too, which we'd love to share right at the end. But without further ado, I told dad I would try to keep it to 10 minutes, but he has a 65-year history of like, welcome, dad. Drop us in with your magic.
I have absolutely no pressure at all. Just a lot of magic coming here. Oh, well, first of all, I just want to say to everybody, thank you for just giving of your time and being on this call tonight. It's just an absolute blessing. It just warms my heart to see you. You know, I've really been thinking long and hard about this whole idea. And what I realized, I think, as I've grown a little older in life and seen a lot and had all the ups and downs and the triumphs and tragedies, is that so much of life depends upon the foundations that you lay. One of the big things that you notice, and the other day I saw a picture of an earthquake, which was quite fascinating. There were some buildings that had literally been reduced to dust and rubble, and others were still standing. And the only distinction and the difference is the foundation upon which those buildings were laid. And our lives are like that. Our lives are basically, in a sense, an ongoing process of building. And we all have a unique and incredible purpose. We have just limitless potential and limitless opportunity. And one of my great hopes is that through being able to impart some of the life lessons that I've learned over a very varied life, that's for sure, with a lot of ups and downs and ins and outs and triumphs and tragedies, is to really try and distill that down into some wisdom, some codes that I believe will be really, really helpful. And the kind of things that I wish that I had known when I was younger. But I think most importantly, they're things that I don't think you can necessarily just learn. I think one of the big challenges that we have in the world we live in today is that there's such a difference between knowledge and revelation. There's such a difference between things that you maybe get taught and things that are imparted. And I think that what I hope to do with those who I may have the privilege of actually going on with and actually spending some really powerful one-on-one time is it's that impartation. Because at the end of the day, it's very much not what you're taught, but what's caught. It's like, you know, if I tell you I've got measles, but I've got mumps, you're not going to catch, measles from, you're going to catch mumps. It's that impartation that I hope will be a real blessing as we talk together and as we really contextualize this to your life. This is not just a kind of a course. This is very much a personal one-on-one where I want to not only give you the things that I know, but I want to actually really be able to contextualize that to the specific issues that you may have faced. Because, you know, a lot of us, as Emma said, a lot of us have gone through life and at some point, and listen, if it hasn't happened to you yet, unfortunately, I've got some not such great news, but I might as well tell you the truth. There will be storms in your life. Storms are inevitable. Disappointments are inevitable. And the question is, how do we weather those storms? It's like, you know, when the floods are coming, have you built an ark? Because if you haven't, you're in trouble. But I really believe that this is the moment where I'm now able and really feeling released and empowered to just give that very quality mentorship time to those with whom essentially I believe God will connect me. So that's my introduction, my darling Emma. And I also want to say hello to my beautiful stepdaughter, Devon Lee, who's also on the call. This is Lynn's eldest daughter too. And it's just lovely to have you have you on the call too. So, darling, back to you.
Let me just start by asking a question here to you guys who are here. And if we're all safe and happy to just drop in openly, just say me or yes or no, it was perfect. How many of us here have experienced in the spiritual community, we call it a father wound or a breakdown with our fathers or parental figure where it's been tough, it's been tricky, there's been things that have come up? Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And I know both the other two are here well, and there's stuff. I want to talk into that a little bit with you, Dad. I was one of those people who was lucky to have a really great dad, and I used to feel guilty about it because I kept meeting people, so many people that were like, me and my dad broke down. And a question I want to ask for you, Dad, is why Tejas, yes, definitely experienced trauma with my dad. Dad, for you, just as a question on the importance of having a father figure, what do you feel makes having a father figure so important? And what are the codes that are so lost in this world right now from fathers that are needing to be rebuilt into the hearts of those who have that wound?
The biggest thing to me is the transference. You know, we have something in this world which is a very instant world. It's like we want it all now. But there are some things that when you're talking about what the father can give to his children, say, that is a fundamental relationship. The father is essentially like a covering for his children. That he's the one who's supposed to protect. He's the one who's supposed to provide. He's the one who's supposed to give them the wisdom that they need to pick them up when they're down, to encourage them to go on. And I think that's really what I've always tried to do. I've always wanted to give whatever I can, whatever I have, in the best interests of you, my darling Emma, and obviously Catherine. And to me, one of the greatest tragedies of my life was obviously losing my daughter. But one thing I do know is that I was a good father to her, regardless of the outcome of her life. And that's a difficult and very, sad, very sad story. But I always wanted the very best for my children. I always wanted to make sure that they had the, let's say, the tools, the life tools, the skills, the understandings, the insights that I think only a father can give. There's a very powerful principle in the Bible. And the Bible, you'll probably hear me talk about a lot, and I make no bones about it. That is the source of incredible wisdom for me. It is something that I read just about daily. I have such an amazing, let's say, respect for the wisdom that it contains. But one of the things that you see in the Bible is this principle of passing the blessing from one generation to another. The blessing of the father was the most coveted thing that you could have. People would do just about anything they could to receive a blessing from their father. And I believe that that blessing comes almost as an impartation. It's not just simply what you hear or what you might read or what we might even discuss, but what I'm hoping is that this will lay a deep foundation, almost on a spiritual level, in your lives, because I believe that's what a father is supposed to do. I believe he's supposed to establish things. I believe he's supposed to make sure that those foundations in your life are as rock solid as he can make them, and to really help you, because fathers, the bottom line is that you can have all the knowledge in the world at the age of 25 or 30 or 35 or 40, but there's nothing that beats life experience. And I have to tell you, today I am 65 years old, so I have been round the block a few times, and I have gleaned a lot, I've learned a lot, and that is what I want to impart.
And let me ask you this. When you were a child, your dad, in case you guys didn't know, my grandfather died when you were 15. And you really had to walk a walk without a father. And in that really brought you to your faith in God. And something I'd love you to drop in with us, because I know that's a code that's basically so fundamental, is the code of faith. And I'm curious to know what faith has been for you and how has God tested and shown himself faithful? Because for so many of us who haven't had fathers and we're seeking a father energy, how has that relationship and that journey brought you fulfillment and brought you into a place of empowerment throughout your life?
It was actually interesting. I was brought up in a household where we had a rule in our home, which was we never discussed religion. My mother and father made this agreement rather strangely. And as a consequence, it was never discussed. And as you mentioned, darling Emma, I was basically somebody who'd had everything. I grew up in tremendous privilege. I had tremendous opportunities. The relationships that my father in particular had politically and in business and in law, I was just set to go to the top of wherever I chose to go. And I was living this great life. I mean, I'd literally flown in private aeroplanes. I'd been on beautiful yachts. I'd smoked the finest cigars and drunk the best wines. And I sat at the age of 18, having completed my school, and I had a great place at the University of Bristol to study law, and I had articles and everything lined up after that. And I thought to myself, life is like a jigsaw puzzle with a piece missing. And I thought, is this it? Is this all of life? Because if it is, I feel like I've kind of had it all at the age of 18. Is it just more of the same? But there must be more to life than this. And one particular night, I felt impressed, and I walked down to the local church, because one thing I knew is God lived in a church. That I was pretty clear about, which of course is completely wrong. God is everywhere. But I sat outside this church and I looked up into the stars and I just said, God, if there really is a God, I want to know you. And it was the most electric moment. I mean, literally the hairs stood up on my arms as that prayer went out. I didn't even know it was a prayer. And thereafter, I began to experience the most wonderful relationship. And God slowly just, I think, won my heart. I was, in a sense, fatherless. I mean, I didn't even know my natural father. I don't even to this day know his name. And my adopted father was a wonderful man and absolutely loving and great, but very much invested in his business. And he became very ill and died when I was only 15. So I was, in a sense, fatherless, but I learned in that relationship with God the love of a father. And that is the one who I walk with. I'm a hater of religion, by the way. I'm not at all a religious person. I don't believe in rules and do's and don'ts. I think those come naturally, by the way, out of a heart that is touched by the love of God. But that is with whom I walk, and that is the foundation of my life. I know that God is good. I know that God is love. I know that God is kind and gracious. I know that God is forgiving, because let's face it, we all mess up in life. And I've learned to walk in that grace and to walk in that love and to walk in that truth. And the Bible, his word, I believe, is just packed with truth. And I've seen the application of that truth in my life. And I've certainly seen how beneficial that can be when it is understood in its context. So if that helps explain my walk of faith. Look who's here. This is a big special bonus.
Hello, everybody.
This is my beautiful.
Thank you. Recognizing a few of you.
If you guys ever want to see Faith,
you're in good hands.
It is Lynn herself, because she was the answer to prayers for Michael, for many of us. And
so much.
The woman herself, she's a powerful woman.
Yeah.
But let me just tune back in, because it's interesting on the topic of faith. And something I also want to ask you guys, because I like to be interactive with everyone who's here, because I often feel like there's so much quality in the people who are here. How many of you guys have either wanted to or desired to, or perhaps have but haven't explored a relationship with a creator or the creator or God, and desired to have faith but not really known or had a role model to show you how to walk that walk in your own life?
Shall we type it out, or should we say it out loud?
Type it
Okay.
out. Type it out.
You know I'm about to start talking.
Jay just put on mute.
For me, it's just a beautiful thing. It's something that I have learned over the years, and learned to hear, learn to listen, learn to understand it's a beautiful dimension of life that I really believe that everybody is intended to enjoy. So yes, I think it's the most powerful thing. And one thing that I really wish to do without in any way putting any pressure on people to believe as I believe, because I believe that faith is a very personal thing. Ultimately, I think one of the incredible things about God is that he gives us the right, the power, if you like, to choose. But one thing is for sure, I will be sharing, because so many of the extraordinary things that have happened to me and the lessons that I've learned have that God element in them. And I believe that much of the wisdom that I've gleaned has come as a consequence of the walk that I've walked with him.
And I also just want to drop into some of these chats that yes, all of us are walking in this relationship with God and building it. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but there is a power that comes, and I can speak as a daughter, when there is a masculine authority that comes in and protects you. And I think so many of us in our faith walk today are walking because we don't have a covering. And so we are literally on our knees and we're like, God, please cover me here, because we don't have a dad or a masculine in this human experience that's actually really coming in and saying, I protect you, I pray for you. And it's something that is a code and an authority that is so different for us as women and men in this world to have that shift and to have that perspective where there's an authoritarian figure that comes in and prays for you. And something I really want you guys to know is, one, it's possible. I think a lot of us think that if we've had a bad father relationship, it's our only father. But there are what I call spiritual elders in our communities. There are humans like my dad who come in and bring in spiritual authority. And something I can say and attest to with the walk of faith is when there's an authority that comes over you and that protection and you're in connection with God, it's like two or more come in to agree for anything and things move. And I've personally witnessed that multiple times with my dad, where I've tried to be a strong, interdependent, but independent woman. And God's brought me to my knees. And I've had to call in and I'm like, Dad, I need spiritual authority. There hasn't been a thing that I've ever prayed for with my dad that hasn't happened. And I can say I work a lot on manifestation by myself, but there's an authority. And I think that's a big wisdom code that I want to emphasize for you guys and for everyone who rewatches this in your faith journey is, one, you don't have to do it alone. And two, there is a deep healing that happens in the heart when we feel that authority coming in behind us and protecting and moving for us, where there is a larger scope that's actually coming in, something that most of us, I think, have never experienced or have never even known how to experience.
You know, just to interject, I absolutely believe that, yes, everybody has had their own experience in life, and everybody has a father, just as everybody has a mother. And there is a commandment in the Bible. In fact, it's the first one that has a promise. And it says, honor your father and your mother, that it may be well with you, and that you may live long on the earth. And I believe that, yes, we do honor our natural parents, but I do believe that fatherhood or fathering is beyond just simply the biological connection. I believe, and it certainly has happened to me, that God has brought people into my life, if you like, father figures at different times, who have encouraged me, who have imparted wisdom to me, who have really, in a sense, kind of opened the way for me or prepared the way for me in that sense. And I believe that that is something which is so needed in this generation, because sadly, and it is very sad, that many people have not had that, let's say, right relationship with their natural fathers for whatever reason. And nobody's pointing fingers, because life's tough and, you know, things do go wrong in life. But I believe that it is so important that people do experience that, particularly in their younger years, because those wounds can be healed. And I think, unfortunately, if you have experienced a wounding in that area, it is a very difficult thing, even to, let's say, build a relationship with God, because God himself is described as our Father. You know, we pray, our Father who art in heaven. If we have a bad relationship with our natural father, or we've received wounding in that area, it's very hard for us to grow spiritually. Sometimes there are blocks. And I believe that part of what happens when you come under, if you like, a covering, a fatherhood covering, is that those blocks start to disappear. When I began to have revelation and understanding of God as my father, my life changed fundamentally. And one thing I do say to people is this, and I've experienced it in my own life, when you get a shift that takes place within, your circumstances will change without. You cannot travel within and stay stationary without. There is inevitably going to be progress. There is inevitably going to be breakthrough. And I have seen this again and again and again. I often believe that a miracle is something which isn't necessarily some physical manifestation. It would be a tremendous miracle if, I didn't have a hand and all of a sudden, somebody prayed and a hand grew. That would be wow. But that would be a completely sovereign thing. I think a greater miracle is when something happens in your heart. And even if it's something that's really difficult, even if it's something that's really painful, often a wound needs to be opened and needs to be exposed in order to heal. And I believe that God never reveals except to heal. And healing, when healing comes, the greatest miracle is when you go with that, and then your life changes, your heart changes, and then your circumstance will change. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's like almost like watching a flower unfold. And I really believe that there will be a lot of healing. If you've experienced those wounds in your life, in your past, then I would really trust and believe that God will do something wonderful in you and for you and through you, and ultimately for your absolute blessing and benefit.
Another big topic as you're talking about these areas of healing is, I don't know about you guys live on the call, always drop into the chat box, I'll read them and respond in. But on the topic of moving forward in our lives, we build faith, we go through family stuff, we're fatherless, we find God, we're on a journey. And then we start looking ahead at things like family. I don't know if you guys have had broken families, or trials with parents or family members or past relationships that have broken your concept of covenant, your concept of what divine union is, of even what to look for, what to know for, how to find guidance. I know even with the best parents in the world, I went down some dark paths with my exes. And my dad really prayed a lot and learned a lot of father codes through me. I'm sure of it. I take full credit. But when I came into my
a lot
healing
of gray hair.
Stop that. I'm dressed in white. I'm clearly 11 out of 10. But what I learned when I came through it and I came back to my dad was what you really look for in a man and what you look for in a woman, and how do you actually know? How do you stand in sovereignty from the past? And Dad, something I would really love you to just talk to us about, because I think these codes are ones that even people with the best relationships in the world are so down to hear. I know me and my partner Daniel are on phone call with my dad quite often. Speak to us a little bit about covenant. Looking into relationships, what are we looking for in today as someone who's walked the walk of a successful marriage in a partner?
They're not coming for me, by the way. I promise that's not for me. You're hearing that siren in the background.
Oh, that's me. I'm so
sorry. One of the things that I think is not really understood anymore. It used to be, but I think it is not anymore. But that doesn't mean to say that, by the way, it's any less true. In fact, there's a very interesting phenomena called chronological snobbery, where sometimes people say, well, just because something's no longer current, it must be outdated and it must be no longer relevant. And that actually isn't necessarily at all the truth. Sometimes things are just simply forgotten. And one of the things that was an impact in my life was when I understood that covenant is very different from any other relationship. A covenant relationship, a marriage, when two people come together, when they decide to share their life. And listen, it in the church world, obviously it happens in sometimes the big white wedding and all the rest of it. But basically it's when two lives make the decision, a man and a woman make the decision to join their lives to one another. And That relationship, that covenant relationship, is unique over and above any other relationship you will ever have. Because in that, two literally become one. That is how their lives then interact. That is how they intertwine. And there's a beautiful tension in that. You know, the tension where once you choose, and this is the beautiful thing about a relationship, a covenant relationship, you are basically in it. It comes from an ancient ceremony, which used to be involving even a sacrifice or some form of shedding of blood. And there would be a mark that would take place. Often, if you made a blood covenant, and that's what it is, it's actually a blood covenant. If you made a blood covenant, that was let's say, the import of that relationship, was because it actually involved literally a sacrifice, some form of life shedding or life joining, more to the point. And when that happened, you would literally exchange clothing, you would exchange cloaks. And what that meant is that everything that I have is yours, and everything that you have is mine. We would exchange belts because that's often where your weaponry would be. And that meant my strength is your strength, and your strength is my strength. And that was the most powerful thing, because you're literally joining your lives together. And it was an unbreakable, unshakable covenant. And it would be a blessing for future generations. You would make vows. You would literally exchange promises before witnesses so that you would be almost accountable. And I think that's something else that is so important and maybe has been lost, that you would be accountable, and that others who witnessed would also be accountable to help you. But it is an amazing and powerful thing. I was actually just thinking that maybe just on this, I would read you what I said to Len when we were married and when we exchanged our vows, because it was a very powerful moment to me. And I think if anything encapsulated what I felt and what I believe covenant's about, this is probably it. So maybe I'll just read it to you. I said to Lynn, I want you to know today that you are living proof to me that God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above and beyond anything that I could ask for or ever expect. You're a sign to me of his extraordinary and undeserved favor and a gift of his grace. When he brought you to me, I knew that he was entrusting me with one of his most precious jewels. Lynn, you have turned my mourning into dancing, my sorrow into joy, my weeping into laughter, and my darkest times into the light of new hope for the bright future that I now have the honor and privilege of sharing with you. Today, as I stand before you, our families, our friends, and the Lord Jesus Christ, who we both love and serve, I solemnly promise you that as long as I have breath in my body, I will do everything in my power to love you as he loves his bride, the church. We are from this time forth in an unbreakable, lifelong covenant with one another. And that means that I will lay my life down for you, protecting you and defending you against anyone or anything that comes against you to the limit of my strength. I will encourage you in whatever you choose to do, and I will do whatever I can to support you and strengthen you if you falter. I will provide for you to the best of my ability and to the limit of my resources. I will care for you if you're sick and comfort you when you are sad. And I will love you and hug you and hold you and kiss you every day that we have together for the rest of our lives. You live in my heart, and I will love you forever. And I think that to me is probably the best that I could do to express what covenant is. And that, I must tell you, is just, maybe that's why, because Lynn reciprocates that we have the relationship that we do, and that with Julia, my late wife, Emma's mother, we had the relationship that we did.
But let's just take a small pause there, because for all of the girls, I don't know about the guys, can we all take a moment to just breathe into that space? Because it's really impactful. Something I've learned in my life is that as human beings, we become vibrational matches to the 5 closest people in our field. We are vibrating energy. And one of the things I always said to my dad is you've got to start speaking, because there's so many men who don't hold these values to women. There's so many men and there's so many girls and so many guys who are trying to wing it in their relationships, who are good in their heart, but they don't have a clue how to actually be held in covenant. And we need to get ourselves around people, men and women, but particularly fathers, because they have that mantle of authority. Women feel that energy of a father masculine, to actually see what the standard is. That this is a standard, and it's not just like a once off. It is a standard that we get to believe in and live in and vibrate to. And it's something I hope everyone who's here begins to feel the importation. And this is one of my reasons I just love having my dad always in the field, is he lives that authentically. It is his expression. And it's something that he not only teaches, but it starts to impart into people around him. It brings a level of standard that most of us have never seen or experienced from a parent or from elders. I've been around a lot of guys who are in their mid-60s. They don't talk that way. Not a lot of them. And for us who are hoping to dare to create a new future for ourselves and for our families and for our kids, we need that multi-generational passage. And we need to get ourselves in that space where we actually realize it actually is possible. Because most of us don't actually truly believe it, even if we want to. So one, Dad, thank you for sharing that, because that in itself, and I hope everyone who hears that gets a standard. For the men, that's the standard that you provide for your woman. And for the woman, that's the standard to expect and pray and believe in for your man.
Now, I honestly believe that one of the things that a man should be, if he wants to really be that man for his wife, that the woman, and they join their lives. So often, I think, unfortunately, in this generation, we have such a shallow perception of relationships. You know, there's so much sort of like, you know, dancing around. And yes, love's always a dance, by the way, and it should always be a dance. And there should always be the excitement of it and the little unexpected twists and turns and new discoveries. You never ever stop discovering, by the way, some new thing in your partner. There's a beautiful scripture in the Bible, and it says live. This is an instruction to men, because men are a bit doff. I mean, women are much. Doff means stupid, by the way. It's a South African word. But men are a little bit dull when it comes to perhaps being empathetic. And so the specific instruction to a man in relationship to his wife is live with your wife in an understanding way. And your job as a man is to basically study your wife, to get to know her, to get to know her as much as you can about her, what makes her tick. You know, I say to Lynn, I'm getting a doctorate in linology. I'm going to have a PhD in linology because I want to know. And the more you invest, by the way, guys, often men say, well, I want to be respected. You know, you know what makes a woman respect you is when she knows that you love her unconditionally, when she knows that you will literally lay your life down for her, when she knows that you will do everything you can to help her and support her, when she knows that you care deeply about her and the things that she cares about. I think under those circumstances, women have no problem respecting a man like that. But I think that's something, again, which I certainly hope the young men that I speak to learn and understand. But I do believe that, you know, for a woman, it's not a difficult thing to respect, to actually, let's say, sort of be under that covering of somebody who you know cares deeply for you. And that to me is that reflection, if you like, of the heavenly. You know, there's something mystical about marriage, the two becoming one flesh. Jesus said, I suppose this is a great mystery. It's a great mystery that somehow in that relationship, you literally join your lives together. And out of it, of course, sometimes comes the most wonderful fruit, like my beautiful daughter, Emma.
A couple
And that
last things
carries it up. Yeah.
just on that point, and then we're going to do one more point and open up for Q&A, because I know we're on our time. But one thing I just want to share here, for all of us who are listening in and with us, is there is a really incredible anointing about a man, at least I've seen it in my dad's field, who is really sovereign in these things. And I used to always say that my dad had this unique ability to call on husbands and to raise up the standards. And it's something that I joke around about, but I also saw it in my own life, where I really trashed my human experience really badly. And I went down some really dark paths. And one, I had a dad who never gave up on me, thank God. And two, I watched him raise the standard for my now partner. And for the women here who are really seeking to believe in themselves and seeking to have an example, there is an anointing that passes. I have seen it many times with women who get close to my dad, and have that level. Their kings walk in through the front door. It's quite remarkable, and it's because it is that energy where a woman remembers. And for the men who are around my dad, he actually mentored my partner for a while. Those men really level up. Let me tell you, they level up. I can say that as a non-biased person who, biased, but who really watched that journey of a boy to a man to a king to that full anointing, and just to know that there is that propensity for us as humans to heal and level up absolutely comes. And I think a big topic for guys, because women, it's often about our heart and faith and family and love and healing our father wound and believing. And once we do it, it's like, oh my God, miracles are happening. But for a lot of men who are seeking father codes, it's often about finance and money, because they are the providers and they want to be kings. And that's a big way, obviously, in our matrix. And so, Dad, I want to ask you to just drop in on the topic. You often speak about, who do we serve, God or money? Why is that so important, and how have you seen God work miracles in that topic of how we serve and what we serve in our walk and in our faith?
Well, I guess in a very real sense, whatever you serve, you are in a sense enslaved to. And money, I have learned the hard way, can be a very cruel taskmaster, but it can be a very wonderful servant. So I think the question when it comes to money, to finance, is it serving you or are you serving it? And I think we live in a very materialistic world. We live in a world where everybody is looking for the next latest, greatest cell phone or some designer bag or some gold watch or whatever it might happen to be. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. Okay. The question is, where's your heart attitude towards them? Do you possess your possessions or do your possessions possess you? And I have learned that money also can be fleeting. It doesn't last forever. Things can happen in life that you don't even anticipate or expect. Nobody saw the financial crash. Well, maybe a few people did, but the vast majority of people did not see the financial crash of 2008, 2010. And I saw how you could literally go from being a millionaire to being literally living for the next salary check in the space of a matter of a couple of years. And yet, the faithfulness of God's provision. That's why it's God or mammon. My trust has never been in money. My expectation is that there will always be money. There will always be everything that I need. And I have experienced miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle of provision in the most impossible situation and circumstances. I'm just trying to think of one quick example that I could give up. Yeah, here's one. About a couple of years ago, I think it was last year, Lynn and I were looking to come to England.
So that story that I think would be better. It's a powerful one. That's why.
Okay.
Sorry, this is the father code 101 that I love when it comes to money. Is after my mom died,
Oh yeah.
our accounts got frozen because they were joint.
Wow.
And tell that story in the prayer and how it
Hectic.
shifted.
Julia and I, when we were married, we bought a house, and although I was the one who was like the breadwinner, we put it in our joint names because we wanted it to be our house. What I didn't realize was that when she died, the mortgage, the bond as we call it here, because she was a co-signatory to that, was frozen. And so I woke up one morning, literally not even 10 days after Julie had died, still reeling from the shock. And I opened my account and there was 2,500 Rand in it, which is next to nothing. And I needed 67,500 Rand. It was, I just sat there and I thought, God, you just got to help me. I just need you to come through for me. And literally, as I prayed the prayer, my cell phone went off and I got a message from a friend in Austria. And he said, we've been thinking about you. So sorry to hear what happened to you. But I'm sure there must be some extra expenses that you're facing. So we're going to send you today. We have deposited 10,000 Rand into your account. I thought, wow, that's amazing. Thank you. Fabulous. Not even an hour later, I got a ping and an email came in. Another friend from overseas said, again, we've heard the challenges that you're facing. We just want to bless you. And we've deposited 15,000 Rand into your account. I said, wow, thank you. About 10 minutes later, the bank phoned and they said, we froze your account, but actually what we realized that we'd frozen in an additional 40,000 Rand that we shouldn't have frozen. So we've released that into your account. So I then had 67,500 Rand, which was exactly what I needed. And it happened literally within hours of what was otherwise going to be a crunch moment. I did nothing about it except just say, God, I need your help. And I know you're going to come through for me. You have before and you always will.
And I think there in that moment, like a big code that landed for me, because often, at least in my generation, money is a big thing. Flexing money, how much money we have, earning. I'm in the coaching industry, so it's a big flash if you make a six-figure year and everything else. But for a lot of us, it's about who's providing for us. And I think if we're looking to the world and that's our current system and that's our mindset, even if we say it's not, but we're still looking there, learning how to actually trust and navigate financial crisis in faith is an invaluable code that provides miracles. And I think in today's society, we don't learn that. We're not taught that. We don't actually have that wisdom code. And fathers and in the old generations had a deep-seated knowledge and knowing of how money worked and how that energy worked that we've kind of lost nowadays. We feel like we have to work hard, we have to freak out that money's this thing and it's that. And actually, there's a unique relationship that we get to build with God to be our provider. And in that, money becomes something that serves us.
I want to tell one more story because it's just come to me strong. And I think it's just an amazingly wonderful story. So you mentioned at the beginning, darling, that I spent quite a lot of time working in the church, so to speak. And actually, I was working with students. And in case anybody hasn't remembered, when you're a student, you ain't got much money. And so my salary was not sufficient. And I was just basically borrowing down on the mortgage on my house, borrowing down, borrowing down. This went on for about nearly 3-4 years. And it literally came to one particular night. I was standing in the kitchen and I just said to the Lord, I said, God, I'm going to have to stop this. I've got to find myself a job because this is simply not paying. I've maxed the credit card. I've got 1 month left of finance on the bond. I need to start looking for a job. I'd love to keep doing what I'm doing. I believe you've called me to this, but you've got to provide. And I felt the Lord spoke to me and he said, you'll never want for money again. And from that day to this, I haven't. But here's what happened next. 10 days later, I get an envelope in the post. It comes from a lawyer in the UK. He's representing one of my father's brothers who I even forgotten that I had. I mean, my father came from a family of 14. We didn't even know all the names of the aunts and uncles. And he had left in his will 50% of his estate to his wife, and 50% he'd split between all his surviving brothers and sisters and their children. And I was one of the recipients because of my father. And I opened the envelope and I read it. And the amount of money that he left me literally settled my bond and gave me enough money to buy a new car, just like that.
And it's something
I have many such stories.
And it's something I just want to say here for you guys is, at least for me, the code that I always get from my dad in that is, if you have a calling and you're doing something that you believe in and there's struggles financially and it feels like it's really sticky and you get stuck in your head, it's time to learn how to shift your mindset and move from serving money to believing that you're provided for. Because if you're in the right place, God is going to meet you there. But we have to be willing, and we also have to believe. And I think when we don't have a covering, we don't have a protection, we don't have someone who's walked that walk and is like, no, go do it, just believe. We stall out on our dreams, we stall out on our passions, and we get stuck in fear. And so for me, a big code there is one, it's going to happen to us. Because when we step into our dreams, we're not supposed to step into it super easy. God really wants to see that we believe. God's like, do you really believe? Because, like, it's great when it's easy and good, but, like, do you believe? And it can be a lot if we don't have people before us. And that's what I really believe, like, the power of fathers did, was they carved the way. They were like, hey, trust me, we went down that jungle. Like, we macheted the path. Believe in yourself. And you're still going to go through your journey. Let me tell you, I don't know if any of you guys are entrepreneurs. I never knew what I signed up for when I did that. But it hits different when you know what is possible and you see the miracles perform and you have that covering and you have that intrinsic belief system. And so
Absolutely.
on that final note, because I know we're at our 1 hour, Dad, I'd love you to just give some final words and also to open space. If anyone has questions, pop them in the chat box or we can unmute. And for you to just give your final thoughts and also exactly, I know we've spoken around the father codes a little bit, but what exactly it is, what you're opening space for us who are here, for anyone who is interested, zero pressure, but just basically to open up on at least what I think is one of the greatest containers I've ever personally witnessed. So yeah, Dad, over to you. And then any chats, guys, pop them in the chat box as well.
Yeah, I really gave this some thought, as Emma said at the beginning, the three pillars of the faith, family, and finance. And what I have done is I have basically distilled my best wisdom, if you like, my everything that I've gleaned in those different areas, and I've put them into 12 different sessions that cover different topics. And I can let you have more detail on that very easily as to sort of more precisely what it is. So number one is my best wisdom, my best thinking on those different areas, and they're broken down to different, let's say, subsets of that. But I think most importantly, and what I really felt was that I should find people and really ask God for people who I can connect with on a much more, let's say, deep level in a one-on-one mentorship, because it's good to have information. As I said, information is one thing, and it's important that you have knowledge. But I think what I try to do, what I'm looking to do, is I'm not necessarily looking for, say, clients. I'm looking for people, young men, young women. Everybody's young, by the way. I call anybody under 65 young. Um, who, who, who I can really walk with. And I wanted to contextualize it to what you're going through in life. Maybe the things that have happened to you in life. Maybe things that you're not so sure about. Things where you need, perhaps you've received some breaking down, but you need some building up. And to really help to lay that solid foundation that I believe fathers should be leaving in the lives of their children. And so it is a relatively small number that I'm seeking God to see, well, are they there? And I don't have that much time, obviously, with the rest of the things that I've got going on in my life, but I'm making time for this. And I want to make sure that it's absolute quality time. So if you would like some more information on it, and I'm happy to set up an individual call that we can have, that I can actually unpack that perhaps in a little bit more detail and maybe get to know you in a bit more detail and to really hear your heart. But if that's the case, then I'd love to set up a separate call. This was a sort of a general introduction, but that's the way that I think is the best way forward.
On that note, does anyone here have any questions, would like to ask anything, drop anything in? super chilled if not. Where we also have, I think, one, what are the biggest lessons from the mistakes you made in the love department? Every girl wants to know it. Michael, the biggest lessons you learned from the mistakes you made in love.
I think the first mistake, or a mistake I made often until finally I realized that I had to learn from my mistakes, is I treated women, I think, pretty badly in my younger years. For me, I was not thinking about their heart, their lives, and even, let's say, the reason why you want to actually join. For me, it was girlfriends, and they were pretty, and it was cool, and it was fun, and all the rest of it. When I was 24 years old, I made a big decision. I decided I did not want to fall in love again, because I realized that that is just wonderful. But if you actually are not ready for it, it's not going to be a blessing to you or the other person. And I just prayed, and I literally asked God to lock my heart, and only to unlock it again when he brought me together with the one that he wanted me to walk with, which turned out to be Emma's mother. And that was the best decision that I made. I didn't have a girlfriend for 4 years. Up until that point, I had no problem getting a girlfriend, but I decided I was going to just wait on him for his choice for my life. And the same situation happened before I met Lynn. It was just waiting on him for his choice for my life. So waiting is probably the greatest lesson that I can tell you. Don't be in a hurry. God's not in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry. Well, we almost think, oh, if only I could just find the right partner, oh, my life would be so fulfilled. That's not what you should be looking for, because yes, it is the most wonderful and fulfilling thing. But waiting for that moment, for that one to come along, and being ready, by the way, when they do, to move. Listen, I was pretty quick off the mark. I got engaged on my first date to Emma's mother, so I wasn't hanging around for a second. but,
We've done the work.
yeah, but I knew I was so sure that this was the answer to prayer, and the same was the case for me with Lynn. That when she came along, I just knew this is the one that God has for me. So wait, don't be impatient, and never settle for second best.
Yeah, super powerful. And something I can definitely say my dad walked with me on. I don't know where you guys are in your journeys with love. I also waited for about 5 years, and I went into celibacy and purity. And let me tell you, it was a journey, and I really needed some encouragement and faith that the right guy would be there. And my dad had walked that path too, but there was a lot of prayer and a lot of support, and it turned out to be the greatest decision of my life. And I would never have been able to have gone through that journey. But yeah, a code that is powerful, and the support that comes behind it. Because I think a lot of girls, I don't know where you're at, we're scared to wait because we don't feel so safe. It's like, I need a man, or I want a man, and there's these men and love. But actually, when we have that safety and we're learning to do the inner work, we can wait. And when we can wait, we can prepare our hearts, and we have a standard. If you've ever forgotten the standard, re-listen to the vow. The vows Michael read. There's a standard to remind us what we're waiting for and what is possible. Even if it feels impossible. I used to always say, no one's like you, Michael. Oh, you ruined me, you're perfect. I manifested a king. So it does happen. Second question. As a father and mentor, is there anything you have noticed the younger under 65 generation are having to face that differs from what you faced as a younger man?
I think in a way, when I was growing up, life was quite simple. I think there were a lot more constants in life, whereas today we live in an incredibly fast-moving society. There is so much change taking place, so much social change, so many of the things that were, let's say, norms when I was growing up. Those norms have either been undermined, or they've changed fundamentally, or they're in the process of changing. And I think it's difficult. I think one of the things that, to be honest with you, I think is an absolute game changer is this,
Mm,
because so much relationship is now basically via this. And the question is, how authentic is that relationship? I mean,
mm,
I love technology. It's wonderful that we are literally on opposite corners of the world having this conversation in real time. And I can see you and you can see me. I mean, wow. That was that was science fiction. I kid you not. When I was a kid, we didn't even dream that this was going to be possible. But here we are today. But the authenticity of relationships, I think, has often been reduced to just putting your best face and your best foot forward on a little screen. But it actually doesn't have the relationship depth that I think you need. And I think that we need to recover, to be honest with you, because
yeah.
everybody can look great for 30 seconds. But often you find that the people who look the greatest have probably sometimes got the deepest hurts. And I've learned that our lives are like icebergs. You know, we just show the little tip at the top, but underneath there's sometimes a whole lot more. And that's the most important part, is actually to make sure that your life is a whole and not just simply something. And that typically comes through relationships. And I think this has been one of the big game changers, without a doubt.
And for me personally, I think there's something really powerful when we get back to the basics. And we actually have people in our lives who tell us that. I don't know about you guys, but I need extrinsic expectation to be able to set out boundaries for myself. And there is just something great when, at least for me, having my dad, where I could say, like, to a lot of guys who are on the texting and all the things and all the pornography and all this shit that's in our society today that bogs down men, that's actually not a standard I'm going to accept. And you can get a lot of heat for it. But if you have a figure in your life that actually sets a standard for authentic relating, for what love is, we come back to what I call generational foundations. And those foundations haven't changed because in the base heart of all of us, we do want intimacy, we do want connection, we do want solid love. We just need to remember it. And today, the society and everything we have makes us forget it. Um, and so it is kind of going back to those basics.
There's another question.
Yes. How, as a
How
woman, can we inspire men to step up to that provider, protector, leader role if they didn't grow up with a good father figure? Send them to Michael. Put that out there as the answer. I sent my partner. There, baby. Sign up. Sorry, Dad. Yes, over to you.
it is a challenging thing, but I think actually a high quality woman will attract a high quality man. And I think that one of the things that as a woman I would encourage you to do is never to sell yourself short and never be willing to just make compromises so that you can somehow, you know, get this Mr. Right or to be somebody that you think he will be attracted to. The most authentic thing that I did, and I want to absolutely recommend this to you, is if you think that somebody is relationship material, shall we say, don't jump too fast. Because if it's real and it won't go away. Ask a lot of questions. You know, when Lynn and I, Devonese mum, first started to connect, we realized, listen, this is serious. Let's make 3 rules. And the rules we made were these. Ask any question you like. No question is off limits. Dive as deep as you like. Keep asking questions until you're satisfied that you have the answers that you need that satisfy you. And walk in the light. In other words, be open, be honest, be transparent. Rather know that there's some skeletons in the closet. And typically every one of us, by the way, has got some skeletons in the closet. Rather be the warts and all and then still love one another. Because I think true love is this, that you know the worst about the other person and you know that you're still going to hang in there. You're still going to stay in there because you know that actually they should have run away screaming from you. So just ask the questions and just leave the relationship the time to mature and to develop, because it will. And people who have had the most dysfunctional things that have happened in their life, I've seen God's healing hand literally turn their life around. I'm in a sense a testament. As I said, I don't even know my natural father's name. And my adopted father, I have few memories of him. And yet God has taught me about himself as a father, and he's taught me to be a father. So take courage. God can do anything. But as Emma said, if you want a helping hand with your partners, I got my hand up. I'm happy to help.
Firstly, Tage, we love you. Thank you so much for being in this space. And I want to
Yes,
add,
absolutely. The soul man, keeping
we
me
got
company.
I appreciate y'all so much. I appreciate y'all so much. That was so informative, and thank you so much, sir, for your time. God bless you all with everything in your relationships and your success, etc., etc. Emma, very nice to see you as always.
it, darling.
Truly, truly. Okay, take care, everyone. God bless.
I love.
Bye bye.
Bye.
The other thing I just want to drop in now that we're all girlies here as well is, as women, when we're trying to inspire our man to step up into the provider, into the leader, into that role, we need to feel safe enough to be seen by a man in all of our stuff. Men provide when we're in surrender and vulnerability, and most of us have learned how to protect ourselves because we've been wounded. And one thing I saw in my own life in calling in the right man and the right person was actually showing myself truly vulnerable in safety. And that was something I was lucky enough to be able to do with my dad. And our relationship got really close after my mom and my sister died, particularly, where I could just open up, my heart cracked, like everything came to the surface. And so one way that we can really do that, and it's just for you girls to know, is when you do have a figure in your life that gives you that space to be seen, to actually open your heart and be like, hey, these are the places that that little girl inside me protects, because there wasn't someone who looked after me, where we can be prayed for, where we can feel forgiveness, where we can feel safe. And what happens is whether the man you're with or the man you're calling in, you become that vibrational match. You literally call them in. And I always said, like, I have so much faith. And the women I know who've worked with my dad one-on-one, and the girls who are in my field, and women who we've lived with, I'm telling you, he's got the secret sauce there, because there's this energy that comes up. There's this like remembrance, there's this safety and vulnerability. And suddenly it happens where we call in men where we don't have to make them step up. They're at that level. And men will never be perfect. Just PS, like, bless their cotton picking socks. They just don't speak the language of women that great. But they have that respect and that power. And there is that authority in you that can devote and actually be safe enough to be provided for. So as women, we have to allow ourselves to be there. And to be there, we need to heal too. And we need to be seen there too.
Fabulous. Well,
Before we close, any final questions? Okay, we're good. Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It's been absolutely an absolute joy to be with you. Thank you for just investing your time in this conversation. And I hope it's been really helpful to you. And as I say, if anybody would like to take this further to know more about the Father Codes and the mentorship program that I do, then please just drop me a WhatsApp. I'm sure you've all got my WhatsApp number, and I would love to set up another call, and then we can see if it's going to work to take it further with you guys. But just such a blessing, and I'm really honored to have had this moment with you.
Before we all leave, Dad, I would love you to close, if you wouldn't mind, and just pray for us as we're all here, if that feels good for you guys, and then we can all go and enjoy our evenings or afternoons wherever we are in the world.
Father, I just want to say thank you for these beautiful young women who are now on this call. And Father, I just really want to lift them to you. Lord, you know everything about them. The very hairs on their head are numbered. You love them with an everlasting love. And God, you've got such a beautiful plan and a purpose for their lives. Lord, I thank you that you've given every one of them the incredible gift of life, and you've given them plans to give them a future and a hope for good and not for calamity. Father, I thank you that you work all things together for good in their lives, Lord, that you will just help them. You will strengthen them. You will bring healing where healing is needed. You will open the way before them, Lord, that you will break open paths before them. Lord, I thank you that we can just call in every bit of the goodness and the grace, the provision and the purpose that you intend. Lord, let nothing be left undone that should be done as they walk in their lives and as their lives unfold before them. Father, thank you for this moment. Thank you that you have connected us. Lord, I know that there is no coincidence. There is no coincidence with you. The fact that we, of all the billions of people in this world, will have connected in this way is because your hand is in it. Your hand of purpose is in it. Your hand of destiny is in it. And Father, I thank you that whatever level that we can connect with one another and walk with one another, I ask that you would bring it to pass, that you would bring it to pass in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 I love.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been amazing, and have a lovely, lovely rest of the evening. And please, as I say, let's stay in touch. You got my WhatsApp.
And for everyone who watches the rewatch, be in touch in the WhatsApp group or directly with us. We are so grateful to have had this space and everyone joining in who was live and who's going to follow up. And Dad, thank you for your time, for your wisdom, for imparting, for dropping in with us, for giving us a standard. It's irreplaceable. We're really grateful.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
my
it
darling.
does.